how a US-Iran war could crash the global economy. Right now, the world is watching missiles fly between two powerful enemies, the United States and Iran. At first glance, it looks like another Middle East conflict, but behind the explosions and military headlines is a much bigger threat, not just to the region, but to the entire global economy. Because if this conflict keeps escalating, the consequences could reach far beyond the battlefield. Oil prices could skyrocket overnight. Shipping routes that carry trillions of dollars in trade could shut down. Stock markets could plunge, and millions of jobs across the world could be affected, all because of a war happening thousands of miles away. This isn't speculation. History has already shown what happens when energy routes in the Middle East are threatened, and today the world economy is even more fragile than before. Which raises a frightening question. If a full war breaks out between the United States and Iran, could it trigger the next global economic crisis? Part 1. The conflict that is escalating now. The tensions between the United States and Iran have been building for years, but recently the conflict has taken a much more dangerous turn. Military strikes, missile attacks, and drone warfare are no longer distant possibilities. They are happening right now. U.S. forces have launched strikes against Iranian military targets. Iran has responded with missile and drone attacks aimed at U.S. positions and allies across the Middle East. Bases, shipping routes, and strategic locations across the region are suddenly on high alert. Each retaliation increases the risk of a much larger confrontation. And history shows that when conflicts between powerful nations escalate, the consequences rarely stay contained to one region. Because the Middle East is not just a political hotspot, it is one of the most important economic regions on Earth. And that's where the real danger begins. Part 2. The most dangerous choke point in the global economy. There is one place in the world that could turn this conflict into an economic earthquake: the Strait of Hormuz. It's a narrow waterway between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. At its narrowest point, it is only a few dozen kilometers wide, but every day an enormous amount of the world's oil flows through it. Tankers carrying energy from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates all pass through this single corridor. In other words, a huge portion of the global energy supply depends on this narrow route staying open, and Iran sits directly beside it. If war expands, Iran could threaten ships, mines could be deployed, and military forces could turn the area into an active battlefield. Even if the strait isn't completely blocked, just making it dangerous could scare shipping companies away. And once that happens, the global energy market reacts immediately. Part 3. The oil shock that hits the entire planet. The first economic shock would come from energy. Oil markets are extremely sensitive to conflict in the Middle East. The moment supply is threatened, prices start rising. If tankers stop passing through the Strait of Hormuz, millions of barrels of oil could disappear from the global markets. That kind of shock would send oil prices soaring. And when oil becomes expensive, everything else becomes expensive too. Transportation costs rise. Electricity prices increase. Factories pay more for energy. Food prices climb because farming, storage, and delivery all depend on fuel. Inflation spreads across the global economy. Countries already struggling with high living costs would feel the pressure immediately. And for poorer nations that depend on imported energy, the consequences could be devastating. But oil prices are only the first domino. Part 4. The global supply chain collapse. Modern economies depend on smooth global trade. Ships carry raw materials, electronics, machinery, and food across the world every day. But a war in the Persian Gulf would disrupt far more than just oil. Shipping companies could refuse to enter dangerous waters. Insurance costs could skyrocket. Airlines may avoid Middle Eastern airspace. Cargo delays could spread across global supply chains. Factories in Europe might suddenly lack materials. Manufacturers in Asia could face production slowdowns. Prices for goods could rise as shortages spread. We saw something similar during the pandemic when supply chains broke down, but a war-driven disruption could hit energy and trade at the same time. And when those two shocks happen together, the global economy starts to tremble. Part 5. The Financial Panic and the Real Lesson. The final and most dangerous stage would come from financial markets. Investors hate uncertainty, and a major war between the United States and Iran would create enormous uncertainty. Stock markets could fall sharply. Investors might move money into safer assets like gold or government bonds. Businesses could delay expansion and hiring. Banks could tighten lending. Slowly, the economic slowdown spreads. Trade weakens, growth declines, unemployment rises, and what began as a military conflict turns into a global economic crisis. But the real lesson goes even deeper. The world economy today is built on an incredibly fragile system. A few critical shipping lanes, a few energy choke points, and a global market that reacts instantly to risk. Places like the Strait of Hormuz may look small on a map, but they carry the energy that powers the modern world. And when conflicts erupt around those choke points, the consequences can ripple across every continent. Which means the real danger of a US-Iran war isn't just military escalation. It's the possibility that a regional conflict could shake the entire global economy. Because sometimes the stability of the world depends on a place most people never think about.